Okay, God. Everything seems to be in some kind of order. Let's have some background music at least. Hi, everyone. I've been tweaking this pretty much all day just to get OBS working properly. Today is Friday the 14th of September, and we got the final election results for the Swedish election, I think 2 days ago. We got the final ones yesterday, which is one reason that I kind of wanted to make this stream now. I am also going to make a bit of a longer video on the topic about the Swedish election, but that's going to focus more on the kind of extremist elements and the international fascination with the Swedish election and Sweden in general. I think everyone is supposed to be able to hear me right now, so I'm just gonna dive right into it. If you have any questions regarding the Swedish elections that you want me to answer, feel free to do so. I will either wait for them at the end, or I will just take them like immediately, depending on where in the rant this is. This is not a structured video. This is literally just me having a rant. If you are so yeah, this is well, first of all, this is my new streaming channel. This is the first like political content I'm gonna do on this channel, and hopefully there's gonna be like more of these stream of consciousness type of videos where I just am able to basically just unload thoughts that I have been stewing on this entire election, because this has been chaos. This election has been chaos. Before I kind of go into the rant, I kind of want to lay the playing field about how the situation currently is. Swedish Parliament has 349 seats. I'm just gonna double check everything just regarding this election. So we have 349 seats, which isn't a lot of seats, but we have 3 coalitions, kind of, and that's important for this election. Hello. So, last election, we have and I have to start with the last election in 2014 because the chaos kind of starts there. The chaos starts way earlier with the Sweden Democrats, but I'm gonna try to lay the playing field as much as I can so everyone has the same like baseline for this rant. Hopefully that'll work. Okay, so we have the center left / leftist coalition, and they are ruled by the Social Democrats. We have an environmental party, and there is also like a left party, like a leftist party, which has sprung from the old Communist Party, but they're not communist anymore. There's a lot of communists in that party, but anyway. And that coalition kind of have ruled Sweden for a while, except for the left party, because the left party is seen as an extremist party, and therefore they are not really included in the government. But they have been supporting the current government, and those parties, the Environmental Party and the Social Democrats, they have been ruling Sweden for a while now. It's important to note, though, that they have not had a majority. Sweden, for the longest time now, has had a minority government, and that is because of the Swedish Democrats, the Sweden Democrats. And the Sweden Democrats are a former Nazi party founded in 1988. They were founded by a member of the SS. This is not me being hyperbolic or saying anything about their politics today. That is their history. They were founded by a member of the SS. So, you know, that's kind of fucked up. And they were founded in 1988. So that's an old member of the SS. And for the longest time, they were considered to be, you know, skinheads, kind of like the way we view the Nordic resistance movement today, or really fringe elements of the alt-right today. They were seen like that, you know, in the 90s, the early 2000s. But around 2008, they started getting some traction. 2012, 2006. Yeah, the 2006 election, they started getting some kind of traction. In 2010, they also, I think they got into government that year, in parliament. And that is significant because they had used to be viewed as like the extreme fringe. But now they were in government. They had over 4% of the votes. And you need over 4% of the votes to have your party included in government. If you get 3.9% of the votes, you are not allowed in government. You do still get some political support for your party, but you don't get any representation. 2014 come along, and the Swedish Democrats have had a skyrocketing in the poll. They have been skyrocketing in the polls and in the election. And a lot of people are kind of scared about this. This is before the migrant crisis, by the way, of 2015, which happened this term. Yeah, the last 4 years, because it's 2018 and I'm bad at math. Which means that it's like a lot of people have blamed the migrant crisis for the Swedish Democrat rise, but that's not really part of it. And I want that clear. They got into parliament way before the migrant crisis, the refugee crisis in Syria. And you know, they keep gaining. At most, in this election, this is the largest they've ever been. They have received 18%. In 2014, they received somewhere around, I think, 13%. That's not a lot. And that's something that I'm also going to mention in the video that I'm going to make on the main channel. That's not a lot. That's not Donald Trump levels of, you know, 47% or 48% or whatever. That's pretty low numbers. But due to the fact that Sweden has a bunch of political parties, the largest political party, the Social Democrats, they landed at around, you know, 28%. That's the largest party. That's significantly large, and they are larger by a wide margin as well. So when international media and stuff like that, they talk about the rise of the far right in Sweden, they are talking about a rise from maybe 10, 12% to 18%. That's a significant rise, but that is not close to like winning the election. all coalitions, all other parties in government think that the Swedish Democrats are extremists. For the last term, the last 4 years, they have been systematically shutting out the Sweden Democrats from all political discussion, which is nice. You know, they are not letting the Sweden Democrats get any political power. And that is despite them having some representation in parliament, but that's not how democracy works. You're not, just because you have 10% of the votes doesn't mean you get 10% of the representation. That's not how democracy works. Even a proportional or representational democracy. So, why have the debate about Swedish politics, both internationally and nationally during this election, been focused so much about the Sweden Democrats? And that is because they have, between 10 to 20%, depending on, depending on the polls and depending on the election. Right now they're at 18%-ish. Because they have that 20% thing, they have stolen voters from pretty much all parties, especially the larger parties. The large parties are the Social Democrats, which are pretty large. They're 28% currently, and we have the moderate party, which is a coalition party, kind of between liberals and conservatives. They have stolen mostly from the moderate party, but they have stolen some from the Social Democrats as well. Because of this, no coalition can get a majority. The center and left coalition in this election got 40.7% of the votes. The right-wing coalition, which is made up by the moderate party, which they're moderates, somewhere between conservatism and liberalism, the center party, which are centrists and liberals, the liberal party, they're called the liberals, and the Christian Democrats. Yes, the Christian Democrats, which are conservative religious party. All of these parties, that coalition, the right-wing coalition, they got 40.2% of the votes, which is 0.5% less than the center-left coalition. But both of these coalitions hate each other. They despise each other. Because they're political opponents. They have historically been like that. The coalition between liberal parties and conservative parties only happened because the Social Democrats in Sweden have been, sometimes getting a majority by themselves. They've not seldom gotten over 50% of the vote, and sometimes they've gotten like 47 and then been able to merge with one other party, and then gotten over 50% in a coalition government. They are the titans of Swedish politics. They are the people who built the Swedish welfare state, the Social Democrats. And that is the only reason why liberals and conservatives are cooperating, because they kind of want to break this social democratic party. Today they're a bit more social liberal, but that is because they kind of want to, the political situation currently isn't that super great towards that. So, the Swedish Democrats have a very small part. They are arguably the smallest faction in Swedish politics, because they're not part of the center-left alliance, they're not part of the right-wing alliance. The liberal factions of the right-wing coalition, they hate the Swedish Democrats. The most people on the center-left party hate the Swedish Democrats as well. And the Prime Minister, who is currently the party leader for the Social Democrats, has said flat out during the campaign that they will never ever cooperate with the Sweden Democrats. They will never give them power. They will not rely on support from them to form a government. In the last election, the only reason we have a government is because there was an understanding that the largest minority would form a government. Even if no one got the majority, Sweden needs a government, so the largest minority should be the government. And that became the center-left coalition. And that was accepted by the right-wing coalition. Yeah, they didn't do well in the election. And they allowed a social democratic party to form a government, which worked fine for 4 years But now we have reached the exact same situation again. And right-wing parties aren't super willing to do that anymore. They don't really want to have a deal where the large minority rules because they want to be in government now. But you know, they didn't win the election. They have fewer mandates in parliament than the centre-left coalition. And that is the situation right now. Without a deal like the last election, there is a high potential for a deadlock, wherein no faction will accept the other faction's policy, which means that no one will be able to form a government. However, you know, you could rely on the Sweden Democrats to give you that support. With the support of the Sweden Democrats at 20%, you could get 60% of parliament, and thereby have a majority and therefore form a government. But everyone has said during the election that they're not going to take support from the Sweden Democrats, and a lot of voters are kind of counting on that as well. So any party that does want to, you know, take support from the Sweden Democrats is going to be seen as like betraying their own voters. And even like passively, like they can, and the Sweden Democrats, they have been in this deadlock position themselves. They didn't grow super much in this election, and they want power now because they have been locked out from all political power, which means that they on national level, on local level, sometimes they get some power, but on national level they don't have any power. But they want some now, and they have said that they will not support a government that does not give them influence. And all other parties have said that they won't give them influence. So they won't, you know, hopefully they won't even be relevant. But the parties also have been locked in this coalition. The coalitions, and they won't break the coalition to support the other side. But they also won't support, they can't support the other side at all. The Sweden Democrats won't support anyone at all, which means that at best we can't have a government unless someone breaks ranks, or we have a new deal. But the deal was widely unpopular last time because people don't like the Social Democrats. That's the baseline. That's where we are right now. The current, like the scales in government, like how much each bloc has, is incredibly equal, incredibly tight. Because during the election night, there was a long time where it looked as if both coalitions would get the same amount of seats in parliament. And the reason we have 349 seats is because we're not supposed to have a completely like deadlock thing. But with the Sweden Democrats taking bits of that, then suddenly it doesn't matter anymore. We can have completely equal seats. Right now, the left coalition has one more seat in parliament, but that is still 40%. That is not enough to form a government. Do you have any questions so far about this horror show? There's also this idea, like both coalitions, the right wing and the left wing, both of them want to form a government on their terms, which means that there's nothing really that works, because the leader of the moderate party, the party that lost the most amount of seats in the election, they lost 13 seats in government, in parliament. They are saying that they want to, take over the seat as prime minister, which is, that's bold for a party that lost the most amount of seats, which doesn't really make sense to me. But but I'm a leftist, so I support the center left coalition thing. Was that a lot of fake news? There were a lot of fake news, but kind of from all sides. There was some scare that there was a lot of scare that Russia would try to influence the election. My former place of employment, I worked in local government. I worked specifically like in the same department as the democracy people. I don't know how to translate that. And they became they were really worried about Russian meddling in the election because they are a neighbor country. They are across the Baltic Sea. And we were kind of scared that that would do anything. And a lot of people spread a lot of fake news about like, oh no, this thing is just Russia. No, this is actual facts and stuff like that. Oh no, your ISP doesn't like me. No. It's net neutrality. Net neutrality is the thing. And but you know, the Social Democrats also spread fake news, kind of. They spread false information, kind of false, throughout more of like migrant communities and refugee communities in Arabic. That became a small scandal with them saying basically that liberals throughout Europe have cooperated with fascists and don't let them do the same thing here, that kind of thing, which is technically true. But the liberals in Sweden have been kind of clear that they don't want to cooperate with the Swedish Democrats, and they do see the Swedish Democrats as the most extreme party. So that's, you know, it's technically true what they're saying, but in context, it doesn't really make sense to promote that kind of thing because that's not really relevant to the current election. It's more relevant to, like, you know, international news and stuff. And saying that stuff in an election is kind of leading in a way that most people weren't comfortable with. Of course, a lot of people also called the Left Party. The Left Party gained a lot of seats. They grew several percent. They are arguably the only other winner in this election outside of the Sweden Democrats, because they grew. They actually gained seats. But yeah, a lot of people called them communists and socialists, and that is because that in their party program they have said that they want to abolish private ownership, which is kind of radical in a Western country, and in a semi-capitalist country like Sweden, because Sweden is kind of capitalist despite being ruled by social democrats, but they're more like social liberals. Foreign entities spreading lies to get right-wing parties to win. Not like foreign entities spreading news wasn't really something we've seen, but the entire thing has been kind of, it's been weird that Sweden itself, I didn't see a lot of influence about that. Talking to other people in Sweden, we didn't see a lot of like foreign coverage about Sweden. But whenever I went to international news sites, then, you know, I saw people speculating wildly about the Swedish election or claiming that the left coalition was ruining the economy and stuff like that. Some financial pages said something that because the Swedish crown, our currency, has been, you know, dropping in value, that means the end is nigh and stuff like that, despite Swedish economy doing fucking great currently. There was a lot of fake news like coming from really fringe elements of politics, not really foreign. There has been like a new political party founded in Sweden very recently about I'm just gonna fix this, got my hair, called Alternative for Sweden, and they kind of said that, you know, they were kind of promoting really false things about how many migrants were in Sweden, how many immigrants were in Sweden, and what they were doing in Sweden. And they promoted a lot of that. And after the election, there has been a lot of fake news after the election because people are not liking the results. But I can go into that later. But Alternative for Sweden, for example, they want to rebrand the immigration office to be the repatriation office, and they have been touring Sweden to do all kinds of propaganda things, and they were really hoping for electoral success. They were hoping for at least 4% because that is what you need to get into parliament. However, during the actual election, they got less than like 0.5%. No one voted for them. We also like, and speaking of fringe elements, there like Sweden has a lot of fringe parties, and I say fringe not like because they're on the extreme, but because they don't have any votes. Like we also have a feminist party, and they are, you know, they're pretty nice. They want to be on the center left coalition, but they were close to getting into parliament last election, but they never really got in. They got close, and then in this election, people didn't want to vote for them because they wanted to vote for something that was a more sure way to restrict the Sweden Democrats, because that was a large part of the party. I'm sorry about terrible lag, but hopefully things are good for most people. The debates were, the debates were strange. Swedish debates are, okay, we have a public service TV channel, basically like PBS, I guess, and they host a lot of these election things. So before any of the debates, they had a thing where every party leader could have a speech to the nation, and they could, you know, present their vision of the future and stuff like that. Ah, nice. And that kind of set it off, and the Swedish Democrats were, you know, every party said their whole thing. You know, the other party will ruin everything. The people who were in power, the incumbents, they were like, oh, well, things are going fine. You know, we have some problems, but things are going okay. And the Swedish Democrats were like, there's too many immigrants. That's always their thing. Recently, they have been pivoting towards that the welfare system can't sustain that many people. And they have kind of getting some support for that, because Swedish wait times in healthcare are really long. And the reason for that is because basically, you know, everyone gets healthcare. Everyone gets pretty much free healthcare. You have to pay, I think, yeah, like if you never go to the doctor, you have to pay, I think, 30, is it 30 bucks? I don't know the exchange rate. Okay, let's say 20 bucks to see a doctor. And if you go to the doctor a lot, then you don't have to pay anything. You have to pay up to a limit, like 100 bucks, and after that you're free forever. Same thing with medication. You have to pay like I think $300, and it's all subsidized anyway. So like it's hard to even get up to that limit. But because everyone can access healthcare, that means that everyone is accessing healthcare for sometimes minor things, and that puts a strain on doctors and the healthcare system as a whole. So people have been. So the Sweden Democrats were like, well, if we only got the immigrants out, then only Swedes would get healthcare, and that means the wait times would get shorter. But that's not true. Weeps in American, yeah, we have. We also have free university. Hell, we get money for studying in university. I was able to sustain myself because I studied in university for years, for 5 years. Yeah, for 5 years I didn't have a job for 5 years. And I just lived on government subsidies that I got because I studied for my bachelor and my master's. So Sweden's pretty, like, in all of this discussion, people are, like, a lot of political parties are saying, like, you know, Sweden kind of sucks. And Sweden does kind of suck sometimes. But Sweden is pretty great. Yeah. After the election, yeah, this is where I'm going regarding fake news. After the election, there was a lot of people crying voter fraud. The voter fraud people were mostly on the fringe, but there are corns of it in the mainstream, and I'm going to get to that. But a lot of people said that, you know, there are, because, like in the comments, like you said, they're high echo chambers. They thought that they were going to get like huge amounts of votes in the polls, but they never talked to anyone. They never talked to people. They never engaged people. So of course they think that. And the thing about Swedish elections is that we don't have booths in the same way that other countries have. Like a lot, like Swedish elections, they're like, you know, they're anonymous and they're pretty fair. But they're kind of fucked up sometimes because, okay, the way a Swedish election works is that you go into a polling place, and basically on a shelf there are a bunch of like notes, with party names on it and like specific politicians that you want to vote for specifically if you want to do that. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. And you take those and then you go behind a thing, you put it in an envelope, and then you give that envelope to someone, and then the vote is cast. Which is, you know, that it has worked. Election observers in Sweden, we haven't really had them, but when they have been here, they said, you know, it's fine. But it does mean that sometimes it's easy. Like when I went to vote, I took the left party thing, and I only took the left party thing, and anyone around me could see that I only took the left party thing. I went behind the, you know, this little screen thing, and I put it in the thing, and then I went. So the way a vote is anonymous in Sweden is that you have to, you know, you have to take several notes from several parties, and then only stuff the ones that you want to vote for, and then discard the rest. Which is, you know, it works. So that's one bit of it. A lot of people were saying that, oh well, people could see who were voting for the alternative for Sweden, and then they just sorted them out later. Which, you know, that didn't happen because the polling place people are equally represented by all political parties. They all have a stake in it, including Alternative for Sweden, if they even participated in that. Anyone can participate in that. Oh, hello. Hello, Grant. Louisiana. Goddamn. And then the other thing, during the actual election, there was we have like election.se. That's a website where you could go and check the election, which obviously crashed because everyone in Sweden was checking the election results constantly, you know, as they were coming in. But the fact that it crashed was for some people like, oh, they've taken it down, the government are censoring the actual results. Because the Swedish Democrats, I think they were like 25% or something, and other parties, which Alternative for Sweden would be included in, were like 8% or something. But then only, I think 4 or 5 districts had been counted. And then when the website came back, like 4 hours later or something, and several more districts had been counted, the Swedish Democrats had dropped, other parties had dropped. So, and a lot of people saw this as like, oh, then obviously they took down the page and then they changed the results to suit themselves. You know, it's a pretty shitty election sheet by the government if they put themselves in a political deadlock, but who do I know? What do I know? It's 4-dimensional chess right there. But that's only been on the fringe, right? That hasn't actually impacted politics. That's just morons on Twitter. What has been concerning though is that in a lot of areas where there live a lot of refugees and a lot of migrants, there have been, many of them have voted overwhelmingly for the Social Democrats and overwhelmingly for the Left Party. Where the Social Democrats sometimes get like 70% or 80%, which is an insane number of votes. And there are two ways to look at this. Either you could look at it that these people have free will, that these people have the choice to vote for whoever they want, and they think that their situation will become better with the Social Democrats in power. And because they are in areas that are like more vulnerable, because that's the only measurement we have. We don't have measurement on, you know, ethnicities or stuff like that. We only have like, well, this area is kind of vulnerable and this area does contain a lot of immigrants. You know, they think that the Social Democrats have the best policy for them, that will make their lives better. That is one way of looking at it, and that's a reasonable point of looking at it, that people have free will and people vote for whoever they want. The other way of looking at it is that a lot of people, including people in parliament, like high-ranking party members of all parties, not all right-wing parties, left parties have been kind of quiet. The entire left coalition has been tight-lipped this entire post-election because they're trying to form a government. But many high-ranking politicians in the right-wing coalition have been saying that this is clan voting. And this is racist. And I'm sorry for anyone who's listening, but I'm like, this is gonna sound kind of racist when I'm quoting them. That some people are saying that immigrant families come in and they vote as a single block, but they have several votes. But there's one. It's the father. He decides the vote for the entire family. Now, there isn't evidence of that at all. But there have been a lot of high-ranking politicians and a lot of high-ranking in the largest parties on the right that have said, like, well, maybe the Social Democrats are having a school in how to vote, and they're telling them to only vote for the Social Democrats, and they don't know democracy, which is dumb. And it's kind of racist as well to assume that. I can understand people coming from a dictatorship, depending on where people come from. I don't know the specific makeup. Syria is not super democratic, I don't think. But I can understand seeing parallels in how you're supposed to vote. Fine, but there's no evidence of that happening. So there's nothing there. There's nothing there to actually go on. Yeah, voter school thing. Yeah, that's a thing that some right-wing politicians, high-ranking politicians in government who voted on specific things, have been claiming that the Social Democrats are holding a voting school for newly arrived refugees or immigrants. You're supposed to do this. But that doesn't really make sense, because voting for government, you have to be a citizen. And most refugees aren't citizens yet. That takes time to become. And during that time, you learn about the political system. You learn about elections. If you don't know about that stuff. Obviously, I have no idea how it's like coming to Sweden as an immigrant. No clue. My dad is an immigrant, but he doesn't participate in integration projects. So why? Because Sweden has a bunch of integration projects where refugees and immigrants kind of go through a type of school about how Sweden works. And you get to learn Swedish there. You get to learn, how Swedish norms and stuff like that, Swedish laws, which a lot of countries have. But some people are saying that they're also having election schools in this, how to learn how to properly vote for the right party, which is a racist lie. That there's no evidence for that, and that doesn't make any sense. Because why would, if you think about it one step, another step, why would people vote for the party that is advocating for them to leave, or is advocating for for government funds to leave the areas they live in? Or why would someone vote for parties that are mandating that people have to do certain things to become integrated into Swedish society? Because a lot of right-wing parties have been saying, well, you have to work for a certain amount of time, you have to work a certain percent of the time, you have to earn a certain amount of money. And the right coalition has also been saying that maybe immigrants should get less pay so that companies will hire more of them, which is also super racist. And why would you vote for a party that wants to reduce your pay, that wants to reduce your legally protected rights, when the alternative doesn't want to do that? When the alternative is hey, you probably know what you're doing. So that's been a chaos. So during this coalition building thing, because no party wants to break the coalitions, especially not the left coalition, because they have one more seat in parliament than the right does. It means it looks as if we're going into a deadlock, because if no coalition wants to support another coalition, then we don't have it. Then we don't have nothing. Then there's nothing. Then no one will get over 50%. You don't need over 50%, but you need to be able. If more people vote against your coalition, your government, your budget, then vote for it, then you get nothing. So the only way for there is a small possibility for the left-wing coalition to actually form a government, and that is for the Sweden Democrats not to vote. They don't vote, at all. They just lay down their votes, abstain, fuck this, kind of, and that's unlikely to happen. But if that happens, then the left-wing coalition will have one more vote in parliament than the right-wing coalition, which will vote against it. The same thing cannot be said for the right-wing coalition because they have one fewer vote. And if they try to form a government and a budget, the Sweden Democrats lay down their votes, then the left-wing can just vote them down. But it does look as if the Sweden Democrats, because they've said during the election that they will not support any coalition that will not give them influence. So it looks as if they will say no to anyone, to any party, any coalition, any government. So far, which which combined with the coalitions also opposing each other, it means that we won't probably get a government. Now we have about a week left before the current prime minister has to undergo a vote in parliament, and either he will be deposed, which means that we won't have a government because a government has not been formed yet, and there is no sign of a new government forming. And if the prime minister is deposed, then we don't have a government. Like, we have nothing. We have no government. If he stays, that means that the current government will stay until we have a new one. But that hasn't happened yet. That has never happened in Swedish history. But we also have never been in this point in Swedish history. There has always been we have never had a deadlock. There has always been a government being able to form. Sometimes a bit weird with liberal parties siding with the Social Democrats or stuff like that. During, for example, the 30s with fascists and Nazis and extreme communists being major players in Swedish politics. Basically, the moderate party of the day and the Social Democrats, they kind of merged to form a very wide coalition. And some people have been speculating that will happen today, but that it will probably not happen because Sweden is not in that kind of crisis yet. There is not a world war on the horizon, thankfully. And that is because the Social Democrats and the Moderate Party, they have entirely opposing worldviews and policies. So a part of me was kind of hoping to have more to say about this, but there hasn't happened much in an election, except for the fact that no coalition can get a majority. No, the Sweden Democrats have grown, but they haven't grown too much. So the news have been kind of weird. On a local level, however, there's where I can go. On a local level, there has been a very different sort of battle ongoing, and that is that Sweden has a different type of government system than I think most countries do. Because we know we have national elections and people know what that is. It's the government of the entire country. But there is also communes, because we have communes, which the closest comparison I can make to that is a state in the US, kind of. Municipality, kind of. And they do most of the local politics, and in Sweden, they have most of the political power. They still have to obey the laws of the land. They still have to follow the regulations that the national government and parliament sets. But when it comes to what happens in the day-to-day lives of Swedes, the communes are the ones who decide most things. The communes are also the one who manage the asylum process, the refugee housing, education, stuff like that. But then we also have something called landting. I have no idea how to translate this. This is like Old Norse words. And yeah, land things. Yeah, land things, I guess. Which is this kind of a middle thing between the communes and the national government. The lands thing, basically they do some administrative things, but the most important thing they do is just healthcare, and that is an entire election just about that thing. County kind of, but they only focus on very few administrative things and healthcare. Kind of county and parish. We have church elections as well, and that's a thing. That's a whole other bag of things. County council, yeah. And they only do healthcare. The Sweden Democrats. And this is where the news should be, by the way. Like regional takeover by Sweden Democrats in Sweden, that's not gonna happen. There's no sign of that happening. The Social Democrats have way more than the Sweden Democrats do, and there's no comparison. Like it doesn't work like that. 82% of Sweden voted not for the Swedish Democrats, and everyone who is not the Sweden Democrats is pretty chill compared to them. So what the news have been focusing on doesn't make any goddamn sense. Especially not the articles that say like, oh, they could win the election. Like, no, they can't. They can't. Even the most optimistic polls place them at 25%, and that's not enough. However, in local elections, people don't care as much. And that means that despite the party leaders saying things on national television about how they would never cooperate with the Swedish Democrats, on the local level they do all the time, and no one cares, because no one cares except for the people who live there. So I live in a city. I'm not going to mention the specific name because I don't want to give right-wing trolls the opportunity to harass me. But where I live, it's a pretty liberal city, and it's pretty okay. But there are places in Sweden where things are chaos. In the southern Sweden, but not in Malmö. And I want to make that clear. The legendary city in the south. There is an overwhelming support for the Sweden Democrats. They win so much there. And in those county councils and in those communes, they can do a lot of damage. And this is a thing that happened a while ago. That a few years ago, 2015, 2016. And the thing is still relevant. That the Sweden Democrats on a national level, they kept their cool, toned down the Nazi stuff as much as they could. They were like, every year there are like between 5 to 15 Nazis that are out there from the Sweden Democrats, like full-on Nazis. Beyond being part of the Sweden Democrats, like the swastikas and that entire thing. That happens every year. What happened in 2015, 2016, and a bit in 2017 as well, was that local parties for the Sweden Democrats, they started advertising the addresses of protected homes for refugees. Basically, refugee camps, but they're not camps, they're just like a house somewhere. And we had a huge range of fires in Sweden where people would torch refugee homes constantly, like dozens, if not hundreds of them. And that's fucked up. But that's not the national party doing that. That is the local party, and they're doing that currently. They don't even have to be in government to do that because they are in the commune. They are in the commune. In the commune parliament, I guess, state senate, and there they do a lot of damage because they get information. They know where the things are, and they started sharing that, on Facebook and on Twitter, like, this is the address of the refugee home, this is the address of that refugee home, and people started setting fires, which the Sweden Democrats said, oh, that's totally unrelated. That has nothing to do with us outing the addresses of these places. But that happened. Thankfully, I don't think anyone died. I don't think, but I might be wrong about that. But that is where the news should be. That is where, like, most of the international news should be. That just, like, even if the Sweden Democrats don't have power yet nationally, they do have power just by being in, like, state senates or whatever locally. But beyond that, they can also form a lot of local parties from other parties have formed some kind of coalition with them. And that's usually the moderate party, the conservative party, together with the Christian Democrats, which are also conservative. And they in local elections, they kind of form these conservative blocks. And there they can do a lot of damage. There they do, like, it's not that they can, well, they can't do too much damage because, you know, they still have to abide by Swedish law, but they can still, you know, administrate healthcare. They can, oh, this is actually good. They can, yeah, they can administer healthcare. They do building projects. They do regulations about, like, what kind of buildings to build, what kind of housing to build, because Sweden has a housing shortage. And they do a lot of that thing. They, you know, the day-to-day activities of the state. And they, you know, they also do, like, education things, and they do after-school programs for kids and stuff like that. That is where they have a lot of power. In most cases, that isn't a real problem, because leftists win sometimes, or they oppose them, or people know that they're fucked up. But there are places where the moderate party and the Sweden Democrats have a joint coalition. And in this election, where the Sweden Democrats gained a lot, well, not too much, but you know what I mean. They gained most of any party. And the moderates lost more than any other party. They lost 13 seats. That is where they, in many places locally, they have been cooperating. And that is where the news should be, because that is where they have power. Because that is also the day-to-day activities of everyday people. Which means that, like, in... okay, like, for some real-world examples then. Okay, I used to be an LGBT educator for my local government. Which is fine, you know, you go to government workplaces and educate about LGBT protections, LGBT rights and stuff like that, so that government workers know how to enforce those rights and how to protect the people that they are legally binded to protect. And this have been happening in a lot of different local communes, because it's been popular around the place. We have. It's been popular mostly from, like, activist organizations, but local governments are trying to make their own thing because it's cheaper, because they don't have to pay licenses from the activist organization. And they and in places where the Sweden Democrats are semi in power or in power, that means that those programs are being shut down. And that sucks. And it's very, very weird to look at, like, my local election thing where I live and see that, oh, my former workplaces might be shut down if they win, because they promote LGBT rights and security, which is part of the law, by the way. But because the government is built up by thousands and thousands and thousands of people, unless we make sure that people actually enforce those rules, then the law doesn't really matter. So because the Sweden Democrats are getting more power in the communes, that means that they can, you know, loosen up on the actual enforcement of protections, of rights and stuff like that. And that is a way of enforcing, like, LGBT hostile politics, female politics, anti-female politics, anti-women politics, and anti-trans politics, all that kinds of anti-refugee politics, without actually having to change the rules. So while a lot of newspapers like The Guardian, for example, or Die Linke in Germany talk about, like, Swedish election, like, oh, they might get in power and then they might change it. Like, they've already been changing a lot of shit on the local level where people actually live. Okay, I need to read comments. I haven't read comments in a while. Louisiana parishes are secular because LA has a completely different legal system than the rest of the USA. Louisiana. Oh, LA, yeah, Louisiana. Oh. I don't know much about, like, local American politics, unfortunately. They scrub away some of the brown states, but the source remains. Yeah, it's kind of an open secret that the current leader of the Sweden Democrats is a Nazi, because he joined the party like at the same time period when the past party leader was like walking around in a Nazi uniform and doing heils and stuff like that. So it's like, why did you join the party then if you're not a Nazi today? Like, why did you join the party when they were Nazis? Like, what? Yeah, they used the lack of deaths as proof that these fires were arranged to smear the Sweden Democrats, which is bullshit. Like, the Sweden Democrats have been trying to twist whatever people say about them to be somehow positive, and that has also become like a kind of a meme in Swedish debate forums, where like if you argue against the Sweden Democrats, that gives them a platform and that will help them. But if you ignore them, that also supports them, because then they can use that to say, well, we are being silenced. We don't get anything. You should vote for us because we are being silent. So like, no matter what you do, you're helping the Sweden Democrats. Crazy that League of Actual Nazis and Rwanda Nazi people to run for office. Yeah. Sweden has, like a lot of people in Sweden have been trying to advocate for a ban on nationalist socialist gatherings and organization. We got some flack from the UN because we are too open about that. We got some flack from the EU also that we are being too open with political extremism. Because we have a bunch of fascist Nazi groups in Sweden. Like we have, well, first Alternative for Sweden, which most people acknowledge as being openly fascist. Not hyperbolic. They are, like, that's the way they are. Then we also have like the Nordic Resistance Movement, which is basically like the Sweden Democrats, but like 20 years ago. They march in they march in the streets using big shields, talking about globalism and stuff like that. Some people are advocating for a ban on that, but some other people are saying that, well, if you ban some political extremism, then you might ban leftist organizations as well, that are working, for. They're working, to protect minorities or to protect immigrants and stuff like that. There's this amazing flow. Yeah, there's a flow chart somewhere where every path leads to you're helping the Sweden Democrats. Mia, please save us. You're only going to take power one day. I actually did occupy a government building once, and the response I got from like one of the most powerful people in the building I occupied was like, well, it's nice that you're occupying us, but you really should occupy like the parliament building, the Senate building. I was like, okay, why are you telling me to occupy the Senate building? Occupying the Senate building would be fun though. And we also have like Nordic Youth, also openly Nazi. They do a bunch of Nazi shit. They regularly they regularly attack pride parades. I was wondering if that was the right word, attack, or just interfere, but no, they attack. Like they do that shit, unfortunately. Is the Nordic Resistance Movement the one that is trying to unify Sweden and Finland and Norway too into a white ethno-state? Yeah, they were banned in Finland for being Nazis, and they were really offended by that. They did not like that at all. But in Sweden, they are full on going. They want to unite Scandinavia plus Finland into a kind of Nordic People's Alliance thing. I'm the kind of person that doesn't really believe in nation states, right? I want a one world government. That sounds very cultural Marxism of me, but like, yeah, all of humanity united as one, right? That's basically a one world government. So it's like, oh well, yeah, fewer countries, that's good. And then you hear this and like, oh yeah, right, Nazis want that too. Then I don't want that. So you have to think like, what does the other side want with the same thing? Well, at least they don't seem to like the Danish. That's a plus for the Nordic criticism movement. Not really. They do actually enjoy the Danish. They want to unite Denmark into this Scandinavian Nordic thing. But I don't think they're very active in Iceland, which is interesting because that's the only place that actually kind of still talks Norse. They were banned, but after being banned, the police allowed them to hold demonstrations. Yup, they do that here in Sweden as well. Way too often. They the Nordic criticism movement, they keep walking around here in Sweden being weird. A lot of weird. But this was about the election, and now we're talking about fringe movements, and I had a point with all of this. Yes, the point of the debates. This is like half an hour ago. Okay, so the debates have been kind of chill, but the further the election has been going, every single party has been trying to distinct itself more than its competitors, or even like its allies, kind of, because the right-wing coalition is still part of 4 parties. There's 4 parties making up one big coalition. The left coalition is part of 3 parties, two of which like wants to form a government, and the left party just wants to support because people don't want communists in power. And then as this happened, as the radicalization of every single party started to manifest itself, except for the left party, because they started doing like Instagram stories and giving dating advice, which apparently worked. The Sweden Democrats started. So this is the thing. Okay, so the left party, the left extremists, they did dating advice. Like, what? And the right wing extreme started saying weird shit. For example, during one debate, the leader of the Sweden Democrats, the topic of integration comes up, right? As it often does in Swedish politics. Because people want to talk about integration. People want people to fit into Swedish society. Which I think is something that everyone does, but a lot of people just use it as a racist dog whistle to be like, immigrants are burning our cars, let's make them Swedish. Which, that doesn't work. And the left party approach to this was like, hey, well, maybe we should fund schools and healthcare and make people have hope for the future. That way they won't take their anger out on cars. Because we have car burnings every now and then from angry students, not just immigrants. Literally everyone burns a car. Everyone between the ages of 15 and 22, I think, has thought about burning a car. If they are like, depressed, have no hope for the future, feeling isolated, stuff like that. That's not really a new thing. So in the debate, in one of the very final debates, where this self-radicalization thing had kind of reached its apex, I think it was 2 nights before the actual election. The topic of integration comes up, and everyone talks about like how they're going to do their thing. The left party talks about like, well, maybe we should have after-school programs and fund schools and stuff like that. But and after a while they start talking about jobs, which that's also an important thing. People need to be able to support themselves or be able to get social support. So that comes up, but the leader of the Sweden Democrats kind of takes this and pivots, because he says something along the lines of, and I'm quoting here, this is not me saying this is the racist leader of the Sweden Democrats. He says, it always comes down to jobs, and the reason they're not getting jobs is because they're not Swedish. They don't belong here. They don't fit in here. They don't belong here. And I'm not being hyperbolic, that's like almost word for word what he said. And that is interesting. That is very open and blatant racism. He kind of tried to backpedal on that, was like, oh, we should allow them to become Swedish and stuff like that. Well, it's like no one is keeping anyone from becoming a Swedish citizen and learning Swedish, and like no one's stopping that. But he wants to force people to conform, and if they don't conform, they want to send people back. So, you know, and that probably led to like the most dramatic turn in that event, where the leader of the Center Party slammed her fist on the podium and said, like, what are you saying? You can't. How are you expressing yourself? And that is the most dramatic a Swedish debate will get. Like, so when we watch American debates and hear Donald Trump say that his competitors have small dicks, yeah, you know. So the leader of the Sweden Democrats being openly racist, that is something that was kind of standoutish. But, you know, people on the right defended that as well, saying like, oh, he's not racist, he's just trying to make people integrate better. But he is a racist. He's a major racist. It's true for the world at large, but it's good to focus on sometimes. There's people out there thinking Scandinavia is still a socialist utopia. Well, I mean, it's not a utopia, and it's not very socialist either, but it's still more socialist, I think, than most countries in the world, and I think it's a pretty good place in the world. But people on the right usually say that this is in spite of being socialist, or in spite of accepting refugees. I think it's because we are semi-socialist and because we take in refugees that Sweden has, you know, skyrocketed in GDP growth and Human Development Index. And I think that's true today, and I think that was true 2015 when Sweden took in over 100,000, I think, over 160,000 refugees. Because that is the thing that got the far right to be like, holy shit, oh my god, they're coming. But it wasn't that important. Like, it didn't change that much. It was important for the people that we helped. I think we should have kept accepting a lot of people, but it didn't change Swedish society. I think it helped Swedish society. I think it's made Swedish society better. I think pragmatically forcing the left party out of the ruling coalition was the worst move the alliance, the right-wing coalition, ever did. Maybe. I think it's a choice that they're doing so that they can excuse themselves getting the support of the Sweden Democrats. Because if they portray the left party as being as bad as the as the Sweden Democrats, then they can just say, well, you know, you got support from the left extreme, then we'll get support from the right extreme. I think that's their end game. I don't think it's going that well for them, because there are 4 party leaders and they all have individual parties and they all have individual things. And 2 of those party leaders have been very outspoken about never working together with the Sweden Democrats. Okay. Tell them about the list of what Swedish voters found important. Yeah. So I think some newspaper did a poll thing, like what issue is the most important for you as a voter. And integration came at 8th place. Healthcare, I think, came up top. I think environment came somewhere up there too. The economy is always high on those lists. People, like, Swedish people don't care about integration. Swedish people don't care about like too many refugees. It's only these 18% in the Sweden Democrats that actually care about that, and that is why they're the only party that actually does do anything. That is the only thing that they talk about in every single debate, in every single party paper, in every article. They always talk about integration. They always talk about refugees. They always talk about migrants, because that's the only thing that the party is based on. Other parties don't talk about all kinds of things, and I think that's to their advantage. I think the left party has been getting some success because they have been talking about being very much being against the racist wave in Sweden, because there has been a wave, and like being against right-wing extremism while also talking about other things. So they kind of got the double whammy thing. Plus, they've been talking about things that actually are important, like healthcare and infrastructure and stuff like that. It's weird for infrastructure to actually be like an election topic, because it became an election topic somehow. I was kind of hoping to have some more news in the stream as well, because I was kind of hoping that at least some semblance of a government coalition would start up now. And there are some possibilities, right? There is one possibility that some coalition will take support from the Sweden Democrats, but that probably won't happen because that government would never get support. There is a theory that the current government will remain because they are the largest minority. That is the government that I want. I don't think that's the one that's going to happen because, you know, the right-wing coalition has said that they probably won't support that, and the Sweden Democrats won't support anyone that won't support their politics. So a right-wing government probably won't happen either, because they did lose a lot in the election. At least the moderate party did. They lost the most, and they are smaller than the center-left coalition. So I don't see that possible at all. I think Sweden is going to get some kind of centrist government coming up, but that would demand that the coalitions are broken. And the coalitions have been a very focal point of the election for years now. That people are voting for the coalition, the right-wing coalition is called the Alliance, and they vote for the Alliance, or they vote for their party knowing that party is in the Alliance and that they will work with that party, with those other parties. And that is crazy. I get that coalitions are a good and useful thing to have, but I think that they're really limiting political flexibility, which is a bad thing in many cases, but I think it's a good thing right now, because otherwise we're going to go into a deadlock. And I think the thing that is going to happen is that the liberal part of the right-wing coalition is going to split from it and form some kind of centrist bloc together with the Social Democrats, because they're social and liberal anyway. And that just means that, we'll get a more liberal government with a socialist in control. Maybe. Hopefully. Yeah, a large part of the Christian Democrats' platform was that if they fall under 4%, which they almost do every single election, they will not be part of the government, and then the Alliance will lose a large chunk of the party, of the coalition, and that would ruin the Alliance. That would set the center-left coalition at a much more favorable position. But we a lot of people in Sweden, because we have so many different parties, and I think that's important to note, we have sympathy votes. That's a large thing in Sweden. Maybe not sympathy vote, but tactically voting, and a lot of people will vote for the weakest party in the coalition, so that party will remain, and so that party can then support their party. I think the reason they grew 2% is because of tactical voting. I honestly don't believe the Christian Democrats are that popular. Sweden is an incredibly secular country, and I don't think... And they've been kind of... Especially in local elections, they've been hammering this on hard that they are Christian. So, who knows? What was my favorite right-wing freakouts about their election results? Oh, I think I'm going to see if I can find this, actually. I think Peter Sweden had a fun reaction about that. I'm just going to check his YouTube channel for once. If he has something. Nah, he hasn't uploaded anything since the election. Just during the election. I did see some kind of freak out where some people said like, this is an election fraud. And I want to find something that is, you know, at least internationally known and not just in Sweden, because I think that just like Alternative for Sweden, for example, I don't think that's very relevant. Oh my god, I'm on Peter Sweden's Twitter right now, and I feel my brain cells are dying. Oh yeah, the Dalai Lama was here a while ago. My god, he only tweets pure shit, doesn't he? Linking the voice of Europe. Oh. Yeah, he's also claiming voter fraud. I think it's the voter fraud thing that has upset me the most. That has upset them the most, that I find most enjoyable. Because it has been interesting to see them like freak out over the fact that they can't win that big. I think maybe, what the fuck is his name? Paul Joseph Watson did a thing about that, because he talked to Angry Foreigner, right? And the Angry Foreigner is a guy in Sweden who he makes videos in both Swedish and English. He has like millions of views somehow, where he walks around in forest talking about how bad immigrants are. And that's all he does. And he was really, I think that guy was really certain that Sweden Democrats would get like massive amounts of vote in the election, and then they gained like 3% or something, which isn't a lot, honestly. In a Swedish election, 3% is nothing. Yeah, clan voting is also one of those things, and that doesn't really entertain me as much as as much as it scares me, because that is a thing that a lot of like actual politicians have been spreading on Twitter about clan voting. I haven't dared to look, but has the most famous Swede on the internet, the Golden, said anything about the election? I don't know if he said anything about the election, but he was in. Okay, so the Alternative for Sweden, they had a big rally in Stockholm, big rally, and they kind of wanted it to be like the Charlottesville of their day, and it was nothing. Everyone basically ignored it. But he was there. Like, people started sharing videos about him because he was there. Because counter-protesters in Sweden record everything. And people, I was watching like a friend stream it on Facebook or something, and I saw him. He was there. I'm fairly certain the Golden One lives in my city. So that's fun. Are there a lot of Buddhists in Sweden? There's some. There's a Buddhist minority, but it's not super big. I don't know why he was here, though. I don't know why the Dalai Lama was here. I have no clue. Like, the Dalai Lama is also a very interesting figure, especially recently, because he visited Malmö, the fabled city of the north. And he said a quote that has been taken out of context so much by right-wingers, where he said something like, Europe belongs to Europeans. He said that. And, I go, yikes to that, right? Europe belongs to Europeans. That's Dalai Lama, what are you doing? But it was in the context, it said like, well, people who come to Europe shouldn't ignore the country that they come from, and they should help rebuild their home country when they can. And Europe should still accept refugees and help refugees while their home countries recover. But you know, he's a religious figure, and I don't see why people take any political points from him because he's a religious figure. He's a nice person, I bet. He's fun. Yeah. He was the Golden One participated in an open Nazi alternative for Sweden gathering. He was a little too eager to get into fights. Yeah, I saw that. He's a big heap of muscle. He's probably roiding on testosterone. Don't all of those guys just hype themselves up on testosterone? Like testosterone cream and stuff like that? It's just Davis Orini. I'm still stuck in like the Davis Orini phase of right-wing internet men being awful. I don't like the kind of meme status he's achieved. He's a dangerous and aggressive man. I agree with that. I love ContraPoints with all my heart. She is my dark mother. But I feel like she has kind of humanized the Golden One a bit too much because he is a Nazi. He's an actual open Nazi. Like H-Bomber guy, he does that kind of too, but he kind of sets, like, I feel like he kind of puts it in a bit more, this guy is an actual Nazi, what the fuck, perspective. I think ContraPoints has been kind of like she still portrays him as a Nazi, but she kind of humanizes him a bit much, and I don't like that. They eat a whole bottle of Brain Force Plus. Love me my soy pills. Also, I'm just constantly checking like news sites in Sweden to see if anything has happened. Going into the weekend. One thing that does seem to be happening in this Swedish election also is that Swedish politics, as I think in most countries, is very regional, right? There are areas where like people will only vote for one party. Like there are religious strongholds, there are conservative strongholds and stuff like that. And this election kind of broke that too. Like there are fewer places where one party is holding the majority. And I think that's good. Like in the north of Sweden is legendarily a workers' stronghold. They vote consistently for Left Party and Social Democrats. And that has historical roots as well, because the north of Sweden is where a lot of Swedish industry is. Forestry, mining, stuff like that. And they consistently vote left-wing policy. But then we also have like regions of Stockholm where only rich people live, where they also vote like 82% moderate party because they love like liberal conservatism, which is a thing in Sweden, which I don't understand how. So yeah, it puts in like this recent election kind of broke that kind of, where it's more of an even split everywhere. And I found that interesting because this is also the election where people are talking about clan voting, where they are seeing this like 82% one party winning big. Because that's happening less now, but that is because immigrants are voting more now and they don't like that. Okay, I kind of want to say regarding ContraPoints, like I love ContraPoints a lot. I think she does really good videos. I think that too often she doesn't take a stand. I think that, and I don't really want to talk about this because I love her so much. She is my dark mother. But I sometimes feel like she's a bit neutral on subjects. I think she portrays things in a like a weighted way, right? She is a leftist, but she is trying to appeal to centrists and trying to talk to the alt-right, and I think that's noble. But you know, I remember when Contra was only rising to fame and still favorited my tweets. Mood. But yeah, like Stockholm, Stockholm is a very liberal city, and they consistently also vote for like the moderate party, the right for the right wing coalition there, and they like yeah. This is also a thing that I kind of want to talk about. I'm gonna see if I can do this, if I can make this work. So when we're talking about like what they can do on a local level, right? Because I believe that on the local level, that is the only place where they can actually do shit. Wait, what? That is where most political power rests, because that is the thing that is affecting most people's lives. The parliament does a lot of shit too, like they change the constitution and stuff like that. But I think that while they do like big reforms in a very like, you know, a big brush thing, on the local party they can do a lot of more significant changes for everyday people. It's just not as many people, but I think that's still important. So Stockholm, for example, is ruled by by the moderate, right? And they are also in charge of building buildings, building hospitals, building healthcare facilities, elder care, all that kind of stuff. So now I'm gonna see if I can, let's see, window source. I'm gonna try to, oh, and there I'm gone. Aha! So I'm gonna, okay, so this is a list of the most expensive buildings in the world. Right? So we have like this thing, Aberai Al-Bait, which is I think a huge, yeah, it's a mega tall complex of hotels next to Mecca in Saudi Arabia. Huge. It's like the picture does not give it credit. It's huge. We have like the Brandenburg Airport, nuclear power, the Marina Bay Sands, for example, which is this thing. Look at this thing. That's huge. And it's an architectural wonder with the, you know, that thing. So, with the liberal conservatives in power in Stockholm, they decide to build a hospital. Just a normal fucking ass hospital. Bit big, sure, but still a hospital. Can't be that expensive, right? Especially not in Stockholm. Stockholm is not a big city. So, you know, we have the One World Trade Center here. Why is this here? There we go. So, the Emirate, yeah, some big palace there. The Palace of the Parliament in Romania, big building, right? Let's see if I can find some pictures. City of Dreams. Look at that thing, that's huge. But as we come down here, like the Palazzo, Taipei 101, Royal Adelaide Hospital. So yeah, okay, we got Royal Adelaide Hospital in Adelaide. And then we have the Nya Karolinska sjukhus. This hospital has been a clusterfuck. It doesn't really look that nice either. Like, what? Doesn't even look like the Adelaide Hospital, first of all. And before I go too deep into what the fuck this is, I kind of want to discuss the hospital outside. Okay, so this has been run by the Moderate Party, and they've been trying to privatize everything about the construction. Still owned by the government, mind you, but it's everything about its construction to management to design. Everything has been privatized, going to consultants. This thing costs an incredible amount of money. $1.6 billion. What? And it has been plagued since day one with, well, first of all, it wasn't even supposed to cost this much. It was supposed to cost like half of that. and it was in construction for years. When the hospital opened, some doors didn't work. Some showers didn't drain water properly. Like a shower drain didn't work properly. Several rooms were dirty. Several rooms had poor ventilation. Several rooms, like nothing worked. Like basic hospital things just did not work. And that is now the 17th most expensive building in the world. We have the Burj Khalifa on number 23. Like we have the highest building in the world, I think. At a lower cost than that. Like sure, I get that Saudi Arabia has shitty building practices, but come the fuck on. We can at least get a working shower drain. Okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be talking about this too much. Yikes. This, like, that thing has been racking Swedish politics a lot, and the moderate party they still got a majority in Stockholm. They still got to be able to rule in Stockholm, despite wasting literally over $1 billion taxpayer dollars hiring consultants to install shower drains that didn't work. The hospital cost $1.6 billion. Oy, oy, oy. Yeah, and they are still ruling that shit. And like it feels like every few months it's a new scandal, because they had to close down a wing, I think, a while ago for like cancer patients. I had to move them into like an old building because some basic thing didn't work. Some hallways are too narrow. Oh, and yeah, that's the thing also. A lot of consultants were personal friends and co-workers with the people in power. So that, it's a story of corruption, which is unheard of on this level in Sweden. It should be noted also that social democratic politicians have been forced to resign for buying like a Toblerone for taxpayer money, or buying a handbag, or stuff like that. Yeah, but the Toblerone thing was a thing. When some lady, I think, bought a Toblerone, like one of those chocolate things, for taxpayer money, and she had to resign. And the moderate party built a expensive ass hospital and get nothing. Oy. Okay. Do we have any other questions about the election? Because it's getting somewhat late. I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to make a kind of longer video about this. But that's going to focus more on like international coverage and right-wing extremism and the international fascination with Sweden generally, because for some reason, like a lot of big newspapers are reporting on Sweden. Sweden has a population of 10 million people. We're not that many people. We're not that big. We're not that important. But people are, they keep reporting on Sweden, because Sweden is seen as kind of like this either socialist utopia or a socialist hellhole, depending on depending on your political like inclinations, I guess. I read an article recently also about how the GOP, the Republicans in America, how they are supposed to relate to Sweden, because they are very anti-socialist. So I think it said something about like half the party has to say that Sweden is either not socialist, and that's why it's going so good for Sweden, because they're not socialist, or it's not going good for Sweden at all because they are socialist. Both of which are kind of false. And I think it's important to say that, because like even if I talk about the right-wing coalition a lot and the liberal coalition, Sweden in general is still pretty socialist. Like we have free healthcare, we have, well, subsidized, and we have like free education. like a lot of free education, and that's kind of nice. You know, we have pretty good infrastructure. We have stuff like that. We have very high taxes. The government does a lot of stuff, and that is what socialism is, I've heard. Jetta Tower. Is that also... Wait. Yo. I'm sorry. Can Saudi Arabia stop trying to pierce the sky? If any country is going to be able to build a space elevator, it's going to be Saudi Arabia, and that's going to suck for everyone, because that means a literal monarchy is going to take over space. There's a number that my grandmother refers to Sweden as a communist regime. Some people think that. Sweden is also, like, on some levels, one of the most liberal countries in the world, because Sweden is the only country in the world where you are allowed to be a corporation who runs a school, for example, and you are allowed in Sweden to take out an unlimited amount of profits from that school. Even in America, there are some limits to that. You can still have a for-profit school, but most for-profit schools in the world are 100% private. In Sweden, for example, you can make an unlimited amount of profits from taxpayer money because the schools are subsidized. So if you have a private school here, then everything is paid for by the state. And private corporations can take a lot of things. Yeah, it's still capitalist, so it's not socialist, yeah. Yeah, like, I think that's technically true. I think it's too hard to define. Like, I know a lot of socialists want to define anything that isn't perfect, like because that is what socialism means, right? That means that the entire system of economy is in one way. But I think there is some nuance there, right? Because I think that every political system is built up by a myriad of smaller systems, and depending on how those systems are run, that will make the whole. So I think that a lot of Swedish systems, like the healthcare, education, infrastructure, stuff like that, I think that is run relatively like what you would call socialist. But because the entire structure isn't, then technically, yeah, it's not a socialist country. It's not a socialist state. But things are run fairly okay. But there are so many more things that I would love to happen. Yeah. Yeah, Swedish GDP is skyrocketing, but so are the class divides, yeah. Economic inequality is a thing that the left party, for example, have been talking about a lot. To which the liberals just say, like, oh, well, the left party would rather everyone be poor. Which isn't a thing, There are several studies that say that income inequality reduces economic growth, which makes perfect sense, because if half the population is poor, they can't buy shit anymore. So of course the economy is going to stall after a while. If only one person has all the money, then people are not going to be able to buy shit. Betsy DeVos would love that. Monarchs in space? I don't know enough about Betsy DeVos to know shit about that. Okay, so yeah. But in short, the Swedish election, no one really won the Swedish election. Pretty much everyone lost, but everyone still kind of claimed it as a victory. Because of the way our democracy works, we have so many political parties. That means that literally any kind of government can still happen after this election. We've reached this focal point in politics where nothing makes sense anymore, because we could still have a very left-wing government, potentially. That could happen. We could have a centrist government, we could have a right-wing government, or we could have a fascist government. Like, literally everything is possible. So like I believe in democracy still. I do, and I believe that Swedish democracy still works. But right now, it's like because there are 8 political parties and they will all act independently of each other. It doesn't really matter anymore, because one party could just shift ideology slightly and shift the entire balance, and then suddenly we have a semi-fascist government supported by conservatives. It is fully possible, unfortunately. I mean, hell, we could even get like it, as unreasonable as it might seem. Sweden has never had a deadlock. Sweden has never failed to create a government, even on the first try. We've always been able to form a government, and I think that most political parties will be very much inclined to form a government, because no one wants to be the party leader in charge of the first failure in Swedish politics. The first failure to form a government, and that kind of sucks. And that is also a thing that I know I want to make a video of in the future. That oh yeah, Betsy DeVos. Oh, I know Betsy DeVos. Yeah, education person. Yes, I know that person. What was I on about? I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, because no one wants to be part of the first Swedish failure to form a government, because that would be awful. But it's entirely possible that we will go into a deadlock, and that kind of sucks. I think Betsy has actually mentioned the Swedish education system as an inspiration. I mean, hell, I think the Swedish education system is pretty good. I think getting profits from welfare systems is shitty, and I think they should be banned, as do most left parties. But subsidized free education. I keep saying subsidized, but that's healthcare. All education is free, except for purely for-profit things where you have to pay to go the course, which are rare. A deadlock is possible in Sweden, but it's going to take a lot of tries, because the Speaker of the House, I think that is the literal translation, has 4 tries on him to form a government. That is his job. I think it takes the role of the king, because the king doesn't really do anything in Sweden. So the thing that he has 4 tries on him to try to form a government, right? He will reach out to different parties to form a government. Obviously, he doesn't really do this in practicality. Like, the parties talk amongst themselves and then approach the speaker. But when they do that, the speaker presents the coalition alternative, basically, and says, okay, let's vote on this shit. And if it passes, then great, we have a government. If it doesn't pass, then he has 3 more tries, because he has 4 in total. If he fails all 4 tries, if a vote goes up in parliament 4 times, and we do not get a government any of those times, then we need to have a re-election, called an extra election. And that has never happened in Swedish history before. We have never failed, even on the first try, we have never failed. We have never gone to a second vote for a government. So that'll be interesting if that happens. And a lot of people are expecting it to happen, because in 1 week we will have a vote on the prime minister, and if he gets ousted, then they're going to try to present the government to replace him. But if we can't get that, because he will most likely be ousted from being prime minister, but then we probably won't get another prime minister, so then we will have a few weeks with just no government. The transfer of power is scary. Yeah, exactly. I mentioned this earlier, that last election we almost had a deadlock, but like most political parties, decided that the largest minority should have the right to rule, because that's, we need a government. And that worked. People liked that for a while, and then it became wildly unpopular among the right because the right didn't get to rule because they weren't the largest minority. And then the youth wing of the Christian Democrats voted to repeal it for themselves. Like, they were not going to support it anymore. And then the Christian Democrats as a whole decided not to support it anymore, and then the alliance kind of had to follow that because the alliance sticks together. I also think it's super rad that we have a political party called the Alliance. A political coalition called the Alliance. We really need... And like, they're blue also. Like, that's their political color. They're called the Alliance and they're blue. I really want the left coalition to rename themselves the Horde. Oh no, that means the Swedish Democrats are the Pandaren, doesn't it? Shit. I'm not okay with that. The Alliance. Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to realize that Sweden was run by Social Democrats for like 60 years, which is the unprecedented in a democratic country. Because Sweden got democracy like over 100 years ago, I think. And you know, for a very significant portion of that has only been ruled by the Social Democrats. They have been the empire. Pretty much, like, they have dominated Swedish politics for decades, and they have, like, you know, they have produced like the great Swedish leaders that people remember in Swedish schools, like Palme, for example, who was assassinated. Only one, like the first of 2 political assassinations in Sweden has been Palme, and no one knew who did it. So that's an interesting. That's an interesting assassination. Yeah, but you know, he was super famous. He was a Social Democrat. Hjalmar Branting is another like very famous Social Democrat, and they dominate Swedish discourse. And even today, like, they are the largest party. I think they got 28%, which is the largest political party by a wide margin. So if like. It doesn't, like, Sweden used to kind of work that the large political party would rule with support of like smaller parties around them. So the Social Democrats would rule with support of the communists, passive support of the communists. The moderate party would, you know, support. Yeah, Anna Lindh is the second. It's the second and the last political assassination in Sweden. We have only had 2. But they did you know, catch the guy who assassinated Anna Lindh, also a Social Democrat, I think. And the Anna Lindh assassination was really scary because no one really knew why he did it. But after a while, people kind of accepted it. The explanation he gave was that he didn't trust politicians anymore and he just killed like the first one he saw. It was weird. It was a weird assassination, and you know, she's still like relevant a lot in Swedish discourse, and I think that's important. I think that's good that we remember Anna Lindh. I think it's weird though that because there was a political assassination in the UK right before Brexit, right? And people don't talk about her anymore much, and that's fucked up, I think. The Palme murder of the Prime Minister then, Olof Palme, has gone unsolved, and that's the only reason why it's so famous. Like, we don't know why he was murdered, and we don't know who did it. So you know, on that, but you know, that's still kind of okay because Swedish politics is comparatively calm compared to many other countries. But yeah, the point of this entire rant was that, well, you know, the Social Democrats have dominated Swedish politics for decades and have, thanks to that, been able to make sweeping reforms to everything, which has created the Swedish welfare state. Which, you know, you can have opinions on that, whether you like the Swedish welfare state or not. I do. But that is because I am a leftist. Yeah, Jo Cox. Yeah, that's her name. But yeah, things are. I have no idea what the fuck's gonna happen in Sweden. I'm probably gonna have another one of these election streams in the future once, you know, we know something more about the actual coalition building, and then I can actually talk about that, because right now it's just like, oh well, no one won the election, things suck, hopefully no one starts seeking support from the Sweden Democrats. And I've tweeted a lot about this as well. I bet the first riot governments are tearing down the welfare state. We have had riot-ish governments a while sometimes. 2010 to 2014 we had a right-wing government. But like it's very hard to repeal popular welfare reforms, right? So we still have free education, we still have subsidized healthcare, and that's very hard to take away, because why would you do that? You have to present that in a positive way in order for people to get behind that, and it's very hard to do. Like the moderate party sometimes advocates for putting in like tuition fees in university, but that's very easy to counter. But then you can, well, look at America, that doesn't work. Taxes is just way better. I think the most the only thing that I can really think of that they did was privatize pharmacies, which has not gone well, unsurprisingly. We have a lot more pharmacies, it's just that they don't sell that much medicine anymore. They sell candy and makeup, and that's not good for a pharmacy, but they have to make a profit now, so. Like the postal service, it kind of counts, but the postal service is still partially state-owned. It's just that when PostNord, which is the Swedish postal service, the Swedish and Danish postal service, it kind of counts. But like the reason PostNord changed so much is because they merged with the Danish post office, and that's, you know, that changes things. Yeah. Every single pharmacy chain runs a deficit, and like one of the arguments for privatizing the pharmacies was that, oh well, now like we'll have more pharmacies in the countryside, so farmers and shit can get medicine, but that didn't happen. It's just that now we have pharmacies like we have Starbucks. That's not even a joke. We have more pharmacies in city centers than Starbucks, and that sucks because I love Starbucks. I don't have a Starbucks in my city. I hate that. I hate everything about this. I want a Starbucks in my city. I need my pumpkin spice. But I can go and buy candy at a pharmacy literally across the street, and I think literally across the other street as well. And 10-minute walk into city, and when I walk into the city, that's like 15 pharmacies. It's actually not. It's like 5 or 6, maybe 7. I don't live in a big city. We have so many pharmacies. They're all empty because no. Why do you go into a pharmacy? Okay, I'm ranting about pharmacies now. This is not what I wanted to do. Oh wow. Peter Sweden actually tweeted out that election fraud is probably not that big of an issue. Although he does blame it on Swedes being brainwashed, so, you know. But yeah, one reason people are also screaming election fraud is that there was also like the polls. This is a thing that I kind of want to talk about. This is a thing I can rant a bit about. that the polls the polls predicted that the Sweden Democrats would receive maybe 24%. But only some polls, right? Sweden has a thing called poll of polls. I think all countries do this, where they like take all the polls and they see the split, right? The Sweden Democrats in those polls would have gotten maybe 21%. But there are some polls, like some polls are managed by like good statisticians. You don't get to sign up to those. They call people, they email people, like they contact people. Like they call you, you don't call them. In every single poll that you could sign up to, every single poll that you could, like, oh, I want to do this, and you just go to a webpage and you do a poll. In every single one of those polls, the Sweden Democrats landed at about 24%, 25% maybe. And then when the election comes around, they got 18%, like 7% difference. And this is a reason why a lot of them are screaming like fraud. Because they don't know shit about statistics. And they don't know that the Occam's razor of the entire thing is probably that, Sweden Democrats are probably more active on polls online than most people are. But sorry for taking you out on detours, Mia. No, that's fine. Like most of my rants on stream are supposed to be detours anyway. I don't think people are coming to these streams looking for a coherent view on something. That's probably what my videos are for. And I'm gonna make those videos soon because I have fucking energy now. Go me, goddamn. I don't have to sleep 16 hours a day. Boy. Okay. Hi. I guess it's back on the Sweden is cucked train. Sweden is cucked. And we're proudly cucked. I don't know. No, that sounds bad because that's a meme. That's the thing also. Okay, yeah, that is something that also influenced a lot of the like election fraud things. The postal service in Sweden is atrocious. It has been known to be atrocious for years. It sucks so bad. It's the worst. They lose packages. They lose letters. But they are also the ones responsible, for carrying the votes everywhere because we have physical notes. We don't do electronic votes. So they carry these things to, to dedicated polling places where they count the things, right? And they do recounts at the places. They count every single vote like 4 or 5 times, so to make sure that it's correct. And during election night, they were super late carrying the early votes. Because you can do early voting super easy in Sweden. They were super late, so people didn't have time to count them at first, which means that the results look a bit weird at first because they couldn't count them all. And then they also deliver expat votes, like people living in Thailand, because we have a lot of Swedes living in Thailand. And a lot of Swedes, living in Spain and France and stuff like that. People who made big bucks and then go live on like the Maldives or something. And they voted, but 125 of those votes didn't make it to a counting place in time. And it's still, I don't know what happens with those votes. Like I think they're still going to be counted, but I'm not sure they are. Because there's a very specific time window when they have to be counted, right? And if they count it after that, it increases the amount of time to prepare for voter fraud, and we don't want that. So I think it's some rule that it has to be counted within like a week or something like that. Probably less than a week. But these votes, they didn't make it in time, so they might not be counted. So 125 votes, it probably wouldn't change anything. But then that it kind of breaks the system, right? If those 125 votes aren't counted. Yeah. Years ago, this is way, way back when, I had a gaming channel. It does not exist anymore. I just play video games. I played a lot of Mirror's Edge, I think, and I did video game reviews. It kind of kickstarted my writing career when I started writing for for IGN Sweden and stuff like that. And you know, I had a somewhat following before, and this was way before I transitioned. So and that's the reason I deleted the channel forever. It kind of sucks because I kind of wanted to keep the subscribers because I had a few. Anyway, the point is, I got a PO box, right? Where people could send me gifts, and I sometimes got a message like, "Oh, we sent a gift. Have you gotten a gift yet?" It's like, "What? I've never heard of this gift. What the fuck is this?" And I never got anything. I never got a single gift. People sent me so much gifts. Apparently, they told me anyway. I never got anything. My PO box remained empty forever. The best way to dispose of a body you murdered is to post it here, since they'd be sure to lose it. Oh, maybe. Were you around for Gamergate? Yeah, I was. Yeah. I wrote for IGN Sweden back then. Thankfully, IGN Sweden was very unpopular, so it didn't matter that much. But yeah, no, yeah, I was around. It's fucking sucked. I actually, this is a tangent. This has nothing to do with the election. But I did, yeah, I had a boyfriend at the time because I was straight, because I was dumb. By this point I had transitioned. I was very early in my transition. And I had a boyfriend, he was nice. And then the Gamergate thing happened. And I remember like what happened the day, because I lived in a shitty student dorm, not this luxurious apartment. I lived in a shitty dorm, and I remember getting a link on Steam chat, which sucked back then, from my boyfriend, which was like, "Hey, have you heard about this? She's a fucking psychopath." And I was like, "What? Who? What?" And she was talking, and he was talking about I forgot her name. I suck at this. But you know, there was a woman in, like, at the center of everything, right? And I got these like weird 4chan threads that he had been reading, and like weird. So we're Quinn, yeah. So we're Quinn, and I got so much shit. I got like a big thing, and I was like, "Oh yeah, if this is true, she's a psychopath." And then I thought about it for like half a second. I was like, well, maybe this is weird, because this like the people who wrote this is X, right? This seems unnaturally bad. Like, this seems like a conspiracy theory. And you know, yeah. And then Anita became popular, and I looked at her stuff, and I liked that. My boyfriend fucking hated it. And God, that was weird. Like, I didn't get much public backlash from my writing, because the people I wrote for, like, you know, my coworkers at IGN, they knew I was trans, but none of my readers knew that, because unless I went to my Twitter, they would have no way to find out. You know, it was just my name on the top of the articles I wrote, which was just reviews. So no one really cared, especially since I didn't like, and especially because IGN Sweden was very small, very few people read it anyway. No one really cared. But and then we broke up, and then I left IGN because I started acting. I think I did something, and that made me stop. I don't remember. But I still have a lot of friends. I'm still kind of a name in Swedish game journalism, kind of. So I'm still a guest on some podcasts, and like I still do some like guest articles on some Swedish game pages, and sometimes. So I'm still around. But it sucks that I'm not more involved, because like most of my friends from that industry have met Anita, Anita Sarkeesian, but I haven't. I have not met her. That sucks, because I've talked to her on Twitter. I specifically remember like years ago, when I first had the idea that I would do like political YouTube. Also fucking years ago, before I actually did it. And because I was way more burnt out then than I am now, which is why I can do these streams. Anyway, I contacted her and Jim Sterling saying like, hey, I was considering kind of doing a mix between Anita Sarkeesian's content and the rants of Jim Sterling, and kind of combining those two into like some kind of political content. Like whatever, like, and I still want to do that. I still do that today. Like, I still worry that I'm copying too much of ContraPoints, which I'm not, because I'm original, creative. But even then I was like, oh, you know, I have this idea and I kind of want to do a merger thing. But I just want to check with you guys if that would be okay with you. And they both, you know, they contacted me and said, yeah, this is cool. What do you want to do? And I said, oh, you know, I want to do some, you know, trans content focused on, you know, trans feminism, probably some video games because I do like video games and stuff like that. And, you know, we talked about it for a bit. And then nothing happened for years because I went to art school instead. I think that might have actually been before, because I think that was when I started writing my thesis, and that thesis writing takes away a lot of your time. I think that was because I wrote 2 theses. And writing 2 theses takes energy. So I didn't, God, also tangent. But that is a reason for, that's probably the reason why well, partially why I started YouTube now, because I'm done with my thesis. And also why I didn't really get struck that much by Gamergate, because I wasn't that prolific and I wasn't that famous, specifically for then, because then I quit my gaming channel. I quit that the same day I started taking hormones, because I was scared, and it was 2012. Yeah, it was fun. It's very prolific writing. Hey, you know, you gotta do a thesis. You gotta do a thesis. It also means that I have a pretty good bachelor's degree currently, and I have half of a master's. One day when I'm not sick and not burnt out, I'm gonna finish that master's. But I have like a very solid bachelor's now that few can contend with, and I like that. When I started applying for master's courses and master's stuff like that, they basically flat out told me that, oh yeah, you can get in with whatever like history program you want, because I got 2 theses. Most people only got only got 1, and I got 2. How much time have you spent on the masters? I spent half a year on one, so that's some courses done. But it was actually right before I started this my channel, like my main channel, because I started making content at the beginning of this year, and then somewhere around like December, I collapsed, because I was also working part-time as an educator, and I couldn't do that anymore because it took up way too much of my time. But up until then, I studied political extremism. So that's fun. That's one of the things that I can honestly say that I have an education in. Because even if I haven't written my thesis on political extremism, I still did some master's courses in that, as well as, God, what the fuck else did I study? It was something else, I don't remember what. I think culture. Yeah, culture intermingling. Maybe. I'm not sure. I haven't studied for a year now, because I quit my master's to focus on work and health, so I could recover and be better, and then I had to quit my job because that was also too much. And then, as you know, I also quit my YouTube for a while because that was also my job, and then I've been sick. But now I'm back, baby. I hope you get the masters. I did a bad thing of being like 90% finished on mine, but life happened and been unfinished for 10 years. Yeah. That's probably gonna happen for me as well. Like unless my health drastically improves, I don't think I'm gonna do much about that. This stream hasn't been about the election for a while now. But it is 10 p.m. where I live, so I am going to I'm going to call it shorten a bit. I'm actually going to give you 8 minutes until 1/4 and then I'm going to cut the stream. Because I do need to eat. And I do need to sleep because I can't stay up too late. Because then my health is never going to improve. Let's try to keep it like specifically to the election, because I have a Patreon stream tomorrow. So if you are a patron of mine, you're free to come back tomorrow same time as this stream, and that's just gonna be a Patreon AMA, and it's probably gonna be more ranting. But that is Patreon specific. I also have in 2 weeks there is going to be a public hangout where you, my fans, are free to hang out with me on Google Hangout. And we're going to talk probably about the election. Yeah, same bat time, same bat channel. Yeah, I did not expect my ice video to do that. Because, like, ice, people weren't talking that much about ice right then. People were talking about ice, obviously, because ice did horrible shit, but I don't think the child separation scandal had happened yet. And then, like, I released a channel, and cinema thing, and then ice started appearing in the news way more than I thought they would. So that's interesting. I still get comments every now and again from right-wing nutjobs being like, "This isn't what ice does, you are racist." So that's interesting. I'm probably gonna have to return to that ice video someday, because yowza. I have a script somewhere about concentration camps, and that deals a lot about ice. And that is the video that I was making right before I became super sick. So that is something that I'm probably gonna return to. It goes into a lot about like what is a concentration camp, what is a what defines a concentration camp, because you remember this. Well, we were at the like the debate with those right wingers, the band, and because I had that a while ago before, like, and that was also before, like, right before I got sick, or sicker. We talked about like, well, this is a type of, like, putting a bunch of kids in a camp is a form of concentration camps, and they said like, well, that's disrespectful to the victims of the Holocaust. And I want to talk about, like, you could see it that way, but also I think it's disrespectful to only call, I think it's disrespectful to, like, a lot of people in Africa and India and North South America, to only call, like, Nazi concentration camps, because, you know, Churchill had concentration camps, and a lot of nations, like France, had a bunch of concentration camps in Africa. So, and I think that's important to note. And also, and then there's also a scale, right? Like, there's a scale from, like, humane prisons, right, to death camps. And if we only get to talk about, like, this specific part, like the absolute worst bit, then we're ignoring everything here in the middle. If we assume that everything here in the middle is just a humane prison, then we're ignoring all the atrocities that are going on here. That's not as bad as a death camp, but still isn't a humane prison. When I'm talking about humane prison, I'm talking about, like, you know, rehabilitation schools and stuff like that. Not like, you know, the American prison system. I'm talking about, like, more Icelandic. You get to spend, you get to, like, chop wood in the forest for a bit whenever you feel like it, and enjoy fresh air to realize that life is good and maybe you shouldn't do crime. Also rant. Wow, I'm so ranty. I've kept this pent up in me for like 3 months, not streaming, not making a video. I have so many words inside of me. Ice Part 2, Fascism Unleashed. What is the name of the second? Ice Part 2, Revenge of the Fash. Attack of the Fash. That is the thing. Ice Part 3 is Revenge of the Fash. Ice Part 4 is Return of the Flash? I don't remember Star Wars titles. Okay. I'm gonna give you 3 more minutes and hope, try to keep it like election focused. Otherwise the Patreon stream tomorrow will just be like the same thing. But I have, I know that some of you have sent me questions on either Curious Cat, Tumblr, Twitter, whatever. I have archived each and every one of those questions. So even if like you ask a bunch of questions right now, I have questions in the archive and that I'm going to be able to rant about. There's also going to be a Patreon Ask Me Anything in 2 weeks, because I have 2 monthly ones. That is Patreon exclusive. Unless you're a patron, you can't see it. Unfortunately, because I do need to have incentives for my Patreon. And then, so you know, there's gonna be questions there too. Register in the Mia party. I mean, I thought about a while ago to when I was in high school. I dropped out of high school and had to go a different course thing. I didn't have to go, but like I wanted to get a high school education, so I dropped out of my normal high school and just enrolled in another one, kind of. And while I was there, the education was so bad. Like the teachers there were useless. So I spent a lot of my time not studying, but doing like political analysis, which is kind of why I became a historian afterwards. Because I wasn't happy with the current political climate, so I wanted to make my own party. But this was before I was properly like enlightened when it came to politics. Like I was a teenager and I was dumb as shit. So I was like, me and a friend kind of tried to start a technocratic party, which is a bad idea. Don't do that. First, don't try to start a political party when you're a teenager and dumb as shit. And second, don't try to start a technocrat party, because it's dumb. I don't like technocrats. Because if we only have technocrats, then all we get is a bunch of like YouTube skeptics trying to dictate policy because on scientific values, which are dumb. Sorry. I know we talked about like how ContraPoints doesn't take too much of a stand and just like is a very like open-ended political discourse person, and I'm not. I am very much opinionated about what I think. I'm very clear with my positions, I think. But I do try to keep it open. You know, like I still try to keep my content open for people. Instead of political parties, how about proper micro-democracy and anarchism? Here we go. Okay, I like anarchism. This is the last question, by the way. I'm sorry. This is the thing. Anarchism is nice. I like anarchism a lot in theory. What I think is that a lot of anarchists underestimate the terror of micro-democracy as well. The good thing for minorities, at least from my point of view, as a trans person, is that nationally, like locally, there's not that many of us, but nationally, you know, there's a lot of trans people. The fear I have is that in like micro-democracy, that those issues would be seen as as a part of an even smaller minority than they are today. Today, a lot of people are saying like, oh, we shouldn't give trans people extra protection or LGBT people extra protection because it's such a small part of the population. And I think in micro-democracy, that problem would still exist, but even worse, because then it might be that like politically active people would be much smaller because it would be like on a smaller scale. But it would be easier for the majority, even in such small cases, to dismiss the minority, because it would be maybe depending on like the commune maybe just a dozen people, and that's easy to dismiss. That is my fear. I still enjoy anarchist discourse, anarchist policy. I like it. I like decentralizing, but I think that while arguing against the tyranny of the state, like the tyranny of like the big bad man over there, I think we're ignoring the terror of the local mayor, for example. I saw a Twitter post about this for a while ago that like while we would be free from the tyranny of the president, we wouldn't be free from the tyranny of the mayor. And I think that is harder for I think that it's harder for a public. I think it's harder for the public to hold accountable than it is for a larger system. So that I still like it, but there's a whole level there. Plus, anarchists historically have a hard time organizing themselves because of the anarchist values, and I'm not super sure that is the best way to get political traction. But I could be wrong. I support a lot of leftist, a lot of anarchist political points and political speakers. So I think it's a good and valid political ideology. It's not specifically for me, but it's very close to what I think. But it's not exactly what I think. Politicon? What the shit? Oh God. Okay, so I went to the page and the first name that came up is Ben Shapiro. Ann Coulter, Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, our boy, Tommy Lauren, there she is. Chris Christie, oof. Yikes. Bill Crystal. Not Billy Crystal. Bill Crystal. Oh my God. This is incredible. Yes, go after Dave Rubin. Yeah, that would be fun. It's in October though, and like even if I had the money, I think it would be a hard time for me to get a visa to visit. But next year that could be fun. Like, okay, I have a dream, right? I have a dream that like, okay, I'm gonna get healthy, I'm gonna get my Patreon started again, I'm gonna get everything, content creation going again. And hopefully in a year or so, I might have enough money to support myself. And the second I can actually support myself, that is a time where I can maybe travel more, maybe do public speaking events more, maybe do like more actively in the world more. And then I do want to get some kind of like travel permit to America. I like it costs something to get from the US Embassy here in Stockholm. But I do want to get one of those like certificates that says like I'm a safe person. I don't know that I am, because I have been very outspoken on the internet against America, against very pro-leftist things. I've been very much against most of what America has done in terms of foreign policy, and I almost wanted to occupy it last year. I kind of had a minor thing where I kind of threatened to occupy the US Embassy. I didn't do it, but I threatened to do it. So that might put a thing where I might not be able to go to America. I hope I will. I think I will. I don't think the American Embassy is going to be that much of a shithead to deny me entry to America. So yeah, you know, that's weird. I hope that I didn't I dread cry. I'd cry too. Like I like there's like I don't like America as like a nation state. And I think there's a lot of problems with American politics and American foreign policy, but I do want to live there. And I kind of want to do that one day. Like if I ever, like if my Patreon like could support me living here in Sweden. Sweden is an expensive country. I kind of want to take that to America. Like honestly, but as long as I can be a Swedish citizen, thank God. And a Dutch citizen, because I'm a Dutch citizen too. But there's a part of me that kind of want to live in America, because like when talking about the when you know, when we talk about like the cultural centers of the world and the political centers of the world, there's no escaping that America is a boiling pot for all of these things. Like that it is a very hot climate, both for culture and for political discourse. And that is what I do. Like I want to like firstly I want to do acting and stuff like that, and do art stuff. That's one thing of my life. And then another part is like I do want to do political commentary. I do want to be a voice in the political spectrum, and doing that in Sweden would be fine. And you know, I'd still probably do that. You know, I still occasionally write an article in Sweden, but I don't do that too much anymore. I want to focus a bit more like on general political discourse. Eventually write a book, and in America that is the prime place to do that. Plus they have, you know, the biggest conventions, they have the biggest things like that. So while I wouldn't have to live in America for that, it would be, you know, nice. Living in America is low on my list of priorities. If I ever get rich, I might do that. Sweden's still pretty good. But I do want to visit America. I very much want to go to America to see, yes, to go to, you know, the cons and stuff like that. And not just Comic-Con, I mean like other political conventions and historical conventions. God, historical conventions in Sweden suck. What would it be if you could come to the YouTube convention next year? Yeah, it would be nice. If I manage to grow my channel a bit, which I might be able to do. I'm a bit skeptical, but I mean, you know, my channel has grown a fair bit anyway. Just by making 7 videos, and as long as I get back on the horse and start producing content, I think I could grow my channel. But I would need to grow my channel, and I would need to get more people on Patreon. But that's my own issue. Going to VidCon could be pretty fun. Would you come to Henry convention? We would talk about nothing but me. As long as I can be a keynote speaker. Yeah, VidCon would be great, actually. I would love to go to VidCon. But I do need to, like, I kind of want to go to VidCon, not just as a person going to VidCon. I would like at least to be seen as a creator. I wouldn't be seen, like, I wouldn't want to be seen, like, I don't need to be seen as like a high stakes creator, because I'm not. But I would like to see, I would like at least to have like some possibility to, you know, be able to retreat backstage and hide myself forever. But I think I can do that, because I don't think it would be impossible for me to reach like Riley J. Dennis levels in a year, hopefully, maybe. I like Riley. Go subscribe to Riley. Riley does good content. And if I could reach that level, then yeah, then I'd feel comfortable going to VidCon. But I wouldn't feel super comfortable going there just as a guest. Not just as a guest. It sounds super elitist stuff, but you know what I mean. Hello, roommate. Ah, she closed the door. Okay, it's getting late. This has been a fun stream. It's been a very ranty stream, and but that is why you come here. I am going to... that's not the thing. The thing is, like, okay, I have, partially I have social anxiety. Partially it is because I have, partly because like it's not cheaper to be a creator of VidCon, but it is like easier, just like managerially, which is nice, and plus it would boost my confidence a lot, and I want that. I want the badge that says I'm a creator. But you know, if I could go to VidCon as a guest and I could afford it, and my Patreon would support it, then yeah, I'd probably do that. But it would just be so much sweeter. Okay. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing me to rant at you. Tomorrow at 1900 Central European Time, I think it's the thing. There will be another stream specifically for Patreons, and you can... and I will see those of you who are patrons then. I will probably do more video game streamy things, maybe even tomorrow. But I'm gonna come back to do some more casual things. Okay. Bye-bye.